Okay.
And we are live. There we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome to SVT time. We're live. Say it in your radio voice, Tom. We're live.
We're live.
Welcome to, this is episode 36. It's another Tuesday. It's another SVT time. Welcome, everybody, for joining in. My name's Dino Monoxylus. Dom Liberati's joining us, as always. And this week, our special guest is Ricky Phillips from Styx fame and The Babies and Bad English and, man, just a whole slew of great rock bands and acts. And anyways, I'll shut up now. Ricky, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. I'm just going to add to that. I'll do anything I can get away with. I mean,
You'll see him if you can't doubt.
We come off stage sometimes. We'll look at each other. We fooled him again because they're cheering as we walk in.
But you always got to say they loved us.
Yeah, it's a good. Actually, the Styx audience is a. I haven't really ever experienced anything quite like it. It's different than just a straight out. There's a lot of women. It's not just rock geeks like I've played for in the past, and it changes the whole temperature. It's fun. They're fanatics. They come in groups. We'll see people. I mean, we're traveling. We're not getting any sleep, and we're wondering how did they get here tonight from last night. But it's fun. The band's fun. Everybody's cool. Nobody, this is. I'm sure a lot of people. I don't know if they bring it up here, but if they were to tell the truth, there's sometimes a guy in the band that everybody kind of tiptoes around or goes. It's none of that. It's everybody. Everybody's insane. They've got a great sense of humor. A couple of our guys, Todd and Lawrence, could probably be on Saturday Night Live this weekend and crush it. They keep us laughing. Everybody's got. We've rolled with this and know when. Okay, so and so's having a little moment, so stay away. But we know they'll go get through it in an hour. That gets about that bad, and the rest of it is just respect and big respect for each guy as a player and as a person. So we have a lot of fun.
It's like, I mean, you got to figure it's it's like being on the road with brothers. You know what strings to pull and what strings to not pull, and when to just leave each other alone. And I will say this. Rachel, my wife, will not let me go to a Styx concert by myself because of that. She's like, "No, I'm coming with you because I know what you're going to. You're not there for the music."
Yeah, well, I think you're good. I think you're good.
Yeah, I listen. I don't run the risk of anybody ever hitting on me at a Styx concert, so I don't think.
Well,
or any concert for that matter.
I think we're a lot smarter and wiser these days anyway, so everybody's safe.
Hey, I gotta ask you, man, how cool is it playing with Todd? Bass drums relationship, man. I was just watching one of his videos this morning on Facebook, and man, he's got chops, but he's just so tasteful too.
Yeah, and he's got a lot of guys that are my favorite drummers, aside from Todd, that worship him, and that doesn't just come with every drummer. Todd, and the cool thing, I met Todd in the studio in Los Angeles. I was doing a session. Remember, I had a cold, and I was kind of setting up in the control room, and somebody had already wheeled my amp out there, or my cabinet out there, and I was hooking it up and kind of sniffling and going, and all of a sudden, there's something about a drummer that's a good drummer when they are just setting up. They'll hit a drum a certain way, and I listened. Then something else went on. Then he was hitting his toms, and I said, "Who's the drummer on this session?" And he said, "Oh, it's Todd Sucherman, the kid that just joined Styx." Okay, I've been hearing about this guy, right? So we had never met. We cut this guy's record in a day. That's how amazingly well. I'm definitely putting the crown on him, but our styles just were immediately like this, and it worked. And we got to the point they were a little bit didn't really have all the songs dialed. So Todd and I just got heads together and said, "Okay, here's what we do. We'll go through the chorus, verse, chorus, standard arrangement. Let's just go into that bit he was doing. And, hey guys, why don't we do it?" And we just discuss every song. Boom, 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 boom. At the end of the day, we did come back the next day and recut a track that we decided we wanted to recut. But when you find somebody like that, and then he's off with Styx, and I thought, well, that was great. I'll just, never be able to work with this guy again. But that was, and then all of a sudden I get a phone call from Todd. Not a lot of people know this story. I get a phone call from Todd, and he said, what are you doing? I said, actually, you know what? I was in the studio this morning and decided I had to get some stuff, and I went to Costco. I just got home and just unloading everything. He goes, well, you got to sit down. I said, oh, what's wrong? He goes, no, just sit down. You sitting down? I said, sure, I'm sitting down. And he said, I just found out that you were at the top of Tommy and JY's list. And the manager said, the hell with the list. Who's the guy you guys want? Because Chuck was at the point where he was not able to do shows. And it's in his book. He's written all the health problems he's had and issues and this and that. But they needed a bass player, somebody that could fit in and seamlessly, hopefully, keep them from, they were booked solid. So he said, I asked if I could be the one to call first. And so how cool is that?
Yeah.
Really
That
cool.
the guy that's been my partner for almost 20 years now, there'll be 19, I'll finish 19 years in a few months.
Yeah.
And the guy's that cool to say to his bosses, basically, JY and Tommy, can I call him? So he said, listen, Tommy's going to call you in a few minutes, but I just want to, are you going to say yes, right? You into this? I mean, and
I don't know.
yeah, let me think about it. It was kind of, and I had just gotten a gig writing 25 pieces of music for a, it's one of those, there's kind of a reel that they play before events and stuff like this, and it was going through that, and then I had to write these little vignettes. Okay. I was in the middle of that, and I was thinking immediately, oh man, I got to finish this because it's too deep into it. But I was now learning, a stack of albums like this of material, and I couldn't talk about it. And a buddy of mine, Chuck Wright, great bass player, he was staying at my house at the time. Living in my house at the time, and I was out back in my studio, and he goes, when I finally could tell him, he goes, man, I thought, where did this certain love for Styx music ever play? But it all has just been, it's amazing that I'm this far into it, because it feels to me like that was so fresh in my memory that it was just so recent, and it's not recent, it's decades now, almost a couple decades. So, but it is fun when you bring up a great first point, because Todd Sucherman is everything and more that you think that he is. I don't know anything that he couldn't figure out and slide by and make it sound like he'd been playing it all his life. He's just never really met with I've never seen him stumble. He'll give you multiple ideas, instead of one or two. And a great guy. We have a blast.
That's awesome. And that just goes to show, number one, the chemistry that you guys have together, never meeting each other and going into a mastering session and cutting a record and doing it in a day with one track the following day. You know what I mean? And then getting the call after, just, you just play every gig like it's your last gig,
Exactly. And I kind of wasn't sure whether I was done, to be honest with you. I was doing sessions. Right. But I was beginning to get in my studio. I was writing music for industrials and for I did a kids TV show. Mark Summers, who was doing a lot of family television. I can't remember the network. I got a call from them, and I was writing music for his new show. I'm those days I was playing I'm playing keyboards, I'm playing guitars, I'm playing whatever I needed, and nobody really came in my studio. I didn't really have a studio that was open to the public. It was just for me for my job, whatever jobs I was getting.
Sure. And
they came in all different directions, but I was kind of having fun with it. I was actually really enjoying it. But I kind of realized as it kept going on, I thought, I'm probably over the period of being in a band and doing what I started this whole thing for the love of. When you see the Beatles and the dream grows.
Yeah.
But then I get that phone call.
That's awesome. And like you say, it's funny you mentioned Chuck, because obviously Chuck's another Ampeg guy as well, so I talk to him pretty, not frequently, but enough. As you're going through the, what's that?
Great bass player.
Yeah, and he's
very. I mean, he. One of the things I play probably 80% of the show with fingers, but certain songs I use a pick to get that sound. Chuck gets that sound with his fingers. I just don't get. And you know who else? John Entwistle, my hero. He did the same thing. Yeah. Chris Squire used a pick a lot to get that sound, and I do as well. But man, he doesn't have the hammers that John Entwistle had. His fingers were hammers, man. But Chuck plays aggressive, and I love it. He gets a really good tone. Of course, he's using SVTs, right? So
Have you seen his new? He just had a new release. I think it was last week. It's killer
really
stuff.
Really good.
We got to get him on. We're going to get him on for SVT time, because he's also doing the Ultimate Jam. Just kind of fired back up again in Hollywood. Cool. So that's very on at the Whiskey. So we'll get Chuck on at some point.
Hey, can I back up for 1 second? Because you and I think before we were on, they were talking about Rudy. And did you know that Rudy and I met in let's see, 1976, I think it was, in Chicago. I ended up traveling around with this band that I had discovered out of Salt Lake City, Utah. Really great players, and they were wild as wild could be. And I was bailing them out of jail, it seemed like, every weekend. But we were in Chicago with a string of dates, and I did a gig, and up walks Rudy, and he goes, "Hey man, hey, you play pretty good, and I know some girls that'll tear up the check at a restaurant down the street. You want to go get something to eat?" And that's how Rudy and I met. And there was a guy named John Brackamanis who was a guy that saw my band and put us in the studio. But while we were there in Chicago, Rudy and I had become friends. And then he, I think, got to LA before me, matter of months. And then I was couch surfing, living, sleeping on, just did an audition, got really lucky, was seen by the sound man and the Babies, who went back and told John Wade, "I think I found the guy where you don't have to play bass anymore. You can just front the band." I don't know any of this, of course. I find all this out later. Wow. But because I always asked Rudy, I said, "Now wait a minute, were you with Quiet Riot before I was in the?" No, he says, "No, you got the Babies gig before I was in Quiet Riot." But I remember Rudy calling me and saying I was now living on Larrabee, which is just right around the corner from the Whiskey. Yep. And Rudy said, you got to come to the Whiskey tonight. You got to see this guitar player I'm working with. And I said, "Okay, Rudy, I'm there." So, guess who that was? Randy. Yeah, right. So it was pretty cool. The very kind of beginnings of the Quiet Riot thing that ended up in, again, that seems like I get these visuals and it just seems so recent and fresh. But
yeah,
that was a while ago.
Wasn't that long ago? Or did you start on?
Yeah,
you mentioned like playing a bunch of other instruments. Did you start on bass, or did you start on other instruments?
Start on piano.
Okay.
And matter of fact, in the other room here, I have the piano my parents bought me in '59. Wow. And I had something like 7 piano teachers. I could sit there and jam and play stuff. But when it came to reading, it was boring to me, the Volga Boatman and all this books we had to learn back then. Yeah. It was just not interesting enough. So, but I kept trying, and I would quit for a year. Then I would go back and have another piano teacher. And, but I was more interested in Little League and more interested in stuff. And I was always grabbing my dad's guitar. I loved piano. It wasn't that I didn't like piano. I just didn't like I was never really a great student to begin with. I was my brain just wouldn't settle down. And it's amazing that I quit college in my senior year. It's amazing to me that I went that far, because I really was not a great student. And yet I could answer all kinds of questions that were deep in the subject matter, but the way you're supposed to learn and study and the way school works, it just didn't fit me at all. But And my brother, on the other hand, he'd have a trigonometry book and go, homework done, good night. You know, we were just totally opposite. I was so jealous of his abilities. You know, he's very bright and knew how to make it all work, but I didn't. So I guess it's funny. I still write a lot on piano because I find it. Actually, I probably write my best stuff on piano. Okay. Every once in a while, I'll come up with a bass riff that leads to a cool song, or a guitar riff, or a little progression that's a little different. And I'm always searching for that little different thing.
Yeah.
But I have all these instruments all over there open. I mean, there's a few things that are out right now. I mean, but and there's my B3 in the corner. I love it all. I just love it all. I mean, bass is the one thing I should talk about that for a second, because I think I was 14 in my first band. I was playing guitar, and my bass player left his bass in my parents' house. We were in the basement rehearsing, and so I was trying to play all the Paul McCartney riffs I could, trying to play John Entwistle, you know, and I was hooked. It just, all of a sudden I realized, oh, I want to be the bass player in a band. How do I tell my band this, you know? And because I couldn't fire my own bass player, but it was something that took a few years before I was just doing both, and I still playing piano too. But I didn't want to be a guitar player, bass player. I wanted to be a bass player, and I wanted to be a guitar player. But there's a difference. It's a different gig. It's a different job. And I always hated it when guitar players would pick up a bass and go, "Yeah, I can play." You know, I mean, no, yes. You know,
exactly.
And it's not right.
No, I love that you're pointing out the difference. There is a difference.
You know, there's a huge difference, and so it took me a while, because then I got into Hendrix right out of the Beatles, and Hendrix blew my mind. So I was trying to learn Hendrix riffs, and then, you know, of course, Zeppelin came along shortly after, but in the middle, I'd had John Entwistle was huge to me. I mean, it was really, and thank God he was there for me, because that's a bass player.
Yeah.
And he was not just a bass player. He took a new art form, rock and roll, that, you know, far from Elvis, but it had morphed into something that was getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. But he was advancing it as he went. And that was a great between he and McCartney, probably my biggest influences besides Chris Squire. And oh gosh, there's others in there. Tim Bogert. Sure. You know, there's guys, and I got to meet all these guys.
Yeah.
In time, didn't ever think I would ever be friends or have met John Entwistle or I toured with Chris Squire. You know, us about 2 years before he passed, we toured together, and we'd have lunch together, because I had used Alan White on drums on something I produced. So I had that in. And so Alan said, "Hey, Chris and I, we're going to get something to eat. You know, why don't you come with us, mate?" And so I got to sit down and open the door, and I could ask him questions. And then after about a week of being on the road, he asked me, he said, "What are you playing through?" He couldn't figure it out. Because I had since switched to, you and I discussed this, the Palmers. He was in the Palmers instead of the cabinets.
Yeah.
And that was something I was basically forced into. And I think it works better for the band, because it gets the live cabinet off the stage and no drum issues and all that. I get it. I went fighting, you know, kicking and scratching the whole way. Yeah. But I think my SVT heads sound amazing through the Palmers. And I have guys come back to me, guys that have been in the business for years, going, "How are you getting that out front? You know, what are they doing to mic you? You got to," and so when you're in a situation like a big arena rock band, you have to make concessions. But if you're patient, I promise you, if stick with it, figure it out, because you could still get the big sound out front. And that didn't happen right overnight. It took me a little bit to figure it out. But anyway, kind of shifting gears there on us. But it made me think of what we're here for and what we're talking about. And without, I mean, I've got my Ampeg Ampeg cabinets in here. I've got the 12 and I've got the 15 in there, and I've got my little mini stack here.
Yep.
But and I use them because they sound great, and I use them on recordings and stuff, especially when I'm writing songs or something. Great tones. Do love my big SVTs, but when I'm here at the house and Melissa's in there, she's back in nursing school, upping her degrees, and so she'll sometimes very, very nicely say, "Can you work with headphones?" So I'll do it.
That's too funny, man. Yeah, because for the longest time, in fact, I think we still have, it might be an old promo picture of you on our website where you're literally standing in front of a wall of 18 and SVTs.
I know the shot.
I know some of them are dummies, but some of them aren't dummies. I mean, you promoted live sound, live bass sound.
That was so cool. The band let me do that because one side was all Marshalls, and then I got the double stack. What is that? 1610s per stack. Right?
That's amazing.
Across the left side of the drum. So
and you stack them vertically too, not horizontally. You stack them.
Yeah, they figured out they were in these racks, but it just looked like this huge stack. But they had these they had a metal girder in the back that held it all in place. It was great.
Was this all live? Or was it like a little bit of half and half?
Was it? Oh, I had. I think one cabinet was mic'd, and that wasn't even in the stack. It was back and buried. We had a way we figured out how to do it. One time, the gig is over, and as soon as the gig was over, somebody went in. There was a room we were able to put the cabinet in. Somebody went back and stole the mic off the. Right off of the.
No way.
And they must have been thinking about it, because downbeat of the last note, somebody ran in there, grabbed that mic, and took off. But we generally had a place where we would mic up one cabinet, and it didn't interfere with the sort of the facade of all the stacks.
Yeah.
But
wow, that's incredible.
That's too funny, man. Now you're using it. Palmer they've been around for a while, but I think the Palmers that you're using were the original Palmers from the first iteration of the company, I believe, from years ago. And
I don't even know, but I know Eddie Van Halen was the first place I heard about Palmers. Okay. I know he was using them. And I read some things about him. He was working with power soaks and building stuff himself as a kid, trying to figure out how he could play these gigs and get the tone without blasting the backyard barbecue, that they were used to play in Pasadena. And they were everybody's best barbecue band in town, and got their start that way. So he was trying to figure out when I crank it, it sounds great. How do I get that sound at a lower volume? And so he was all about studying that stuff. Yeah. And then he started using Palmers at one point for whatever application. I really don't know. Yeah. But I know that it was the Def Leppard guys that turned us onto the Palmers, because they were getting killer sounds out front. The Marshalls sounded fantastic. Yeah. But that's how they did it.
You got to put, any bass player that's out gigging, when you do that, you got, obviously, I'm sure you work with, I don't know who your front of house guy's name is, but I'm sure you guys have been working with him for quite a while now.
Yes.
Amount of trust in how he's shaping the sound.
Amen. Amen. And Josh Groban was stealing him from us with copious amounts of money. So we couldn't blame him. But we've now been able to hang on to Cookie for a number of years. Thank God. He is like you're saying, it's such a special relationship. And
because it's, any one of us that plays a room, that has the house sound guy, right? And you show up and he's standing there, with a $20 DI saying, we're just going to plug into this. You're like,
excuse me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hang on a second.
Yep.
But yeah, you know, you make concessions because it's for the betterment of what's going to sound out front versus what you're going to sound like on stage to yourself.
Mhm.
You know, that's amazing. How's my SVT doing, by the way?
Hey, I'm treating it right. I'm treating it right. Dom, do you know this story?
I do not. I know that he has.
You tell it,
so
you know.
much
You tell
personal
it. You tell it because I like your side of it.
So I had just started working for Ampeg as a product specialist, and Tommy Wilson, who's a dear mutual friend of Ricky and mine, and he was the product manager at the time. And Ampeg had just launched the SVT VR, the blue line SVT. And I was hounding Tommy. Like at that point, I was doing NAMM shows. I think for like he used to call it Price is Right. Do you want cash and prizes or cash or? So I was like, no, dude. You know what? I'll do this NAMM show. Just give me a VR and we'll call it even for this show. I worked cheap back then, by the way. So, anyways, long story short, I'm hollering. I was like, dude, where's my VR? This is like months after. He's like, I'm still waiting on my SVT. So finally, he fesses up. He goes, dude. He says, I'm sorry. He says, but Ricky's going out on the road and he needed some SVT. So I kind of gave him your SVT.
Now,
at first, I'm like, what's that?
I hope you know that I knew nothing about that. I didn't say, I don't care who he is. I mean, I always wondered. I hope I clarified that I had no idea. I took until you and I, where were we? I think
it might have been the next NAMM show.
It may have been the next NAMM show or something. I'd find out, and then we've had this on-running,
awesome.
gag about it. But I felt bad. I was like, I hope he doesn't think I knew and stole his. I was stealing his head.
Yeah,
they did. I think Tommy did tell me. Now I'm starting to get a little bit of a recall that. By the way, you probably owe Dino a thank you, and I think I did find out after the fact.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Tommy told you might want to avoid Dino for a couple of months,
for a couple of years, right?
But that's awesome. That's the running joke with my VR now.
Yeah.
And you know what I did, because they've had so much road use now, right? I had them, all the connections gone through and totally resoldered and just really, I think that they sound amazing still.
Yeah,
absolutely. All the abuse that they get on the road, bouncing in those trucks and all that stuff. And probably now that I'm talking about it, probably due for another look over, taking it apart. But man, they just sound great. Yeah. And I'm always thrilled when I get guys that are at the show. Maybe they're playing with this. There was one point where the Foreigner guys came to the gig somewhere, and I was getting this like, oh my God, your SVTs sound amazing in the mix. That's what you want to hear, because I hate it when I go, yeah, I couldn't hear you very well, though. It's like, ugh. Then you go to that special guy, Cookie in our case, and you say, were there sound issues the other night? Or what
right.
Now,
are you guys all on in-ears too with sticks? You are? Okay. So you're hearing everything now. And
I'm not. I don't even know if I could have done the Bad English gigs with in-ears, just the way we approached sound and live sound. Neil's so loud anyway. And I was loud, my SVTs were cranking, and because you could hear the differentiation from when you're 6 feet in front of your amp and then you're up at your microphone at the front of the stage. I mean, it's a different tone, and you want to be driven by it. So that's all we knew. That's all we did. And then I got talked into the Palmers, and then the in-ears were a must with sticks. So that was my first introduction to figuring out how to do that. And the only time I have problems with it is when we get a new console, because there's always these updates, and then they go to here's the new version. Oh yeah, it's going to be simple. No, it never is. It's always this nightmare until they get back all of these songs that you've tweaked over the last 11 years or whatever it is, and they're exactly where you can hear everything when you got to sing, and you're back to scratch. And I hate that. We just went through that when we came back from COVID in June, when we were able to tour again last June. and they said, "Oh, and by the way, we have a new console." I'm like, "You got to be kidding me!" First of all, we haven't played in a year together, and now we're got a new console on top of that. So that was a trying time.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
we got through it. Now it's all back. It's all lovey-dovey again, and everything's sounding groovy.
Can you control your own in-ear mix, Ricky, or do you rely
No,
on?
I can. The volume of it, I can, but I can't separate. Like if I need more vocal or I need more kick drum, I can't do any of that.
Okay. All right.
But I have a lot of sign language that I have perfected with my monitor mixer. Evan knows every little signal or sign I give him, because I might be in the middle of singing and have to go, and okay, but
That's the hardest, playing.
Oh, hang on one
singing,
second.
And knowing,
Yeah.
I was gonna say playing and singing and knowing something's not right.
Right. Yeah. Playing and
Just trying
singing and having to adjust your in-ear mix at the same time.
Because as a bassist, you have to be playing pretty much always. It's not like a guitar where you can like strum a chord and just like use that dead time or that air.
Yeah, to give a hand signal.
Yeah, yeah.
I've always, it's, and I understand why, obviously in a situation of production like this, but like when we walk into a small room, if there's a Midas board or something up front that has Wi-Fi capability, 9 times out of 10, I'll ask the front of house, can you just set me up for a monitor mix that I can only control them? Like they'll lock you out of the board,
right,
and just give you, access to your channel. And that way they were not hounding the guy. I could sit there on my iPhone and adjust my levels the whole time, So
Yeah.
I was just
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Dom. Go ahead.
We were just saying how different it is, like when you're playing bass, especially if you're playing bass and singing, how limited you are in terms of time to actually communicate something if it's not right, like to the monitor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
really
welcome to my it's it is different. Our guy though, he is so. Evan is we're very fortunate. We have a great crew, killer crew, and so patient, because I know he wants to punch me half the time, because it's like whenever there's a problem, it's like I want it fixed freaking now, and it's not always as easy as just pulling back a fader or something. There's something else that's canceling. There might be something happened and somebody, if for people listening who might not know what this is, you got everything, your whole band, everything is coming right here. It's not coming from over there, the drums and the guitar here and this and that separation that you get. It's all feeding at the same time. So there's going to be cancellation. And basically frequencies have a fur to it that it cancels all kinds of stuff. So I sometimes need point on a keyboard. For example, if Lawrence is playing a pad with a piano part, I'll say, just give me the piano. Don't give me the pad underneath or whatever. And you build all your tracks like this. So when you're singing in pitch with the other guys, and there isn't some little weird off note that you think is pitch and it's not. So I don't know if that's clear to people who may be listening, but it's a strange anomaly, especially for bass players, because of the nature of the low end frequencies. They're just so big and fat and hairy that when you put the edge and the cut on the top, which is what I like, so it's like Chris Squire or like Entwistle. It's like you can hear the point of not only is it big and round, but it's also got some sort of a badass cut to it on the top. And it's a dance, but I've got really good mixes right now. I just probably jinxed myself at the beginning of the tour. But I'm excited to go do this tour, because we're just, everything got it back, where we had it at one point again, and everybody's killing it. Everybody's playing great.
So does your in-ear mix change from song to song depending on your need and what you? Oh, interesting. So it's not just set it and forget it, and that's it for the next 2 hours.
Yeah. I got to the point where I said, Evan, the only way this is going to work is every song has got to have its own recall. Yeah. Because that's the only way I'm going to be able to do this.
Wow.
So
and he didn't punch you. And he didn't punch you.
Not that time. No, I'm sure he's thought about it, but I think in the moment he's so cool because he knows we're artists, I guess, if that's a good way of making an excuse for my behavior. But I mean, sometimes you're passionate and you get pissed off and you want because you didn't play something the best it could possibly be played. And I think we all have that. And I've learned I'm way better than I used to be. But and I will usually try to find a time where it's just the two of us. And I've learned that over the years. And so we get a lot more done. You got to learn how to play. You need to fight, but you need how to do it in an adult manner or in a manner that I love my relationship with Evan, and I think he feels the same way because we started off in a certain way and now we've got it to this point. And I'll just try to think of compliments. Yeah. Remember when such and such a song, you figured out that this was causing this and that was, I think the same thing is happening here. Give a little respect for somebody figuring something out for you instead of just jumping all over them. And I think, and we hang. I mean, when we have days off, especially now that the summer's starting, we'll get our crew, and there'll be a few times during the summer where, okay, drinks are on us, boys. Come on, let's go. Let's all go get out. And it isn't us and them. It's a big family. We love our crew, and I'd rather hang with them half the time. They're a blast. Yeah. And I like to play golf. So I play when I'm on the road. I'm looking at dates where, okay, we're off here. Oh yeah, I know. Of course, we got to play. Cronin we did some shows with Cronin. The REO is going to be on the bill. Loverboy this summer. It's going to be Loverboy, REO, and us. Well, this goes back 25 years with Styx and REO. So we flip-flop headlining. But and we get to choose pretty much what our cities are, and they get to choose which cities they want. They work it out. Management does that really. But Reno plays golf, and I think one of his guitar players plays golf. Kevin wants back in. He hasn't played for a while. Bruce, the bass player in REO, Bruce Hall, he and I play golf. My band, they're not interested. But I'm the weird red-haired stepchild, that goes out and plays golf. But for me, it's a lot like music. You've got to figure out rhythm, and you've got to stay in that rhythm. And golf speaks to me in that way for some reason.
Dom, we got to put together an Ampeg artist golf tournament.
Now you're talking.
We were just talking to Andy Sachon from Billy Joel's band. He's a golfer. I know Bob Glob is a golfer. I mean, if I went down the list, there's probably more golfers on the list than not. So at some point when we can all get together, we're gonna have to sponsor maybe not just bass players, just get a bunch of musicians together.
I'll make some merch.
Yes, sure.
I'm not a golfer. I grew up. Everybody in my family golfs. My 7 brothers and sisters, they all golf. My parents golfed. I am the most educated non-golfer that you'll ever meet, because on family get-togethers, that's all everybody talked about was freaking golf. And I'd be sitting there, anybody want to talk about Harley Davidsons and music? Go. I was delegated to the nieces and nephews table at that point because all the kids wanted to talk to the cool uncle instead of them.
There's something to that, though.
Exactly. I'm the weird uncle in the family. So
yeah, but you're sitting that's the right table. They're having the most fun over there, milking each other. Yeah.
I think I played golf with my dad once growing up, and he was like, "You're trying to kill the ball. You get out of here." And it was like the last time I was ever golfing.
Trying to kill the ball.
Well, and it's hard not to, because you want it to go as far as you possibly want to hit it. And so that's something you have to fight against in golf, because really what distance comes from is the matching up of all the parts at contact. So when your body's out here because you're swinging so hard, it can never really meet up. So it's discipline, and it's hard, and every golfer overswings at some. I don't care who they are on the PGA, wherever they are. But it is something. And there's the patience about playing too many riffs and everything too. There's a whole bunch of similar things, or playing without purpose. You've got to really know what it is you're there to do, you know.
Do you take a full bag out on the road with you?
Yeah, I've got a set of clubs on the truck right now, but I'm kind of doing a thing with Callaway. I'm definitely doing a thing with Callaway right now. So I did 2 days worth of hitting with 2 guys, and got a real club fitting. And so I just got those clubs. I've got about 4 or 5 games on them.
Okay.
And then they found out that I want to do these radio promotions on the road which we've done for a number of years. Well, win around a golf with Ricky Phillips from Sticks.
Yep.
And they do whatever the radio promotion is. And then if they don't play golf, they can give it to their dad or their husband or their brother or sister or whoever it is. And they get to bring somebody to ride with them. They don't ride with me. And I bring generally one of the guys from the other bands. Tom Gimbel, who is a sax player and Foreigner. I used him a lot. He and I have been buds for ages.
Okay.
And so Tommy and I used to have a blast doing that. But then Bruce Hall from REO, same way. I'd bring Bruce, or generally find somebody who's gonna have some fun doing it.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. I mean, let's face it. For anybody that looks at Styx or Foreigner, any touring band, they're like, oh man, it's rock and roll and it's party every night, and
if they only knew.
Yeah, if they only knew, it's like
party in my bunk. It isn't for everybody, but I love it. I still enjoy it. There's times when I say, oh God, give me a day off. But that's all I want is one day off.
Yeah.
We have, like I said, because we all get along, it's not so hard. Now, for people who may be, at least, 30 years younger than me, when we used to tour, when I was in the Babies, for example, and that's the first time I ever met the guys in Styx, because we toured with Styx. We toured with Journey, Alice Cooper, AC/DC, and we were the 2 bands that were kind of the opening acts at festivals and stuff. So we did a lot of gigs with AC/DC, and got on and on and on. But in those days, when you pulled the bus out of town and you got about 3 miles away, the TV went because there was no satellite.
Right.
There were no cell phones. We couldn't call home until we got at the end of our destination 8 hours later or wherever you're going. And one time, I'll tell a story on Jonathan Cain. All the guys, I stayed in my bunk. I was asleep. Some of the guys stopped at the truck stop when we were refueling, went in to get something to eat, got back on the bus. And about 2 hours later, maybe 3, I start hearing the rattling of chains of people's bunks sliding, pulling back have you seen Jonathan? Anybody seen Jonathan? Would you know Jonathan? So Kane had gotten off to call his wife, and he didn't even have shoes on. He was standing, it was the summertime. He just was at a payphone that was hanging on the outside of whatever this place was, talking to his wife, and turns around, the bus is gone. So he got himself to the closest airport, and we were on the road with Journey. This is before he had any inkling that he was going to end up being the guy that wrote all the songs for Journey. But he got himself to the airport, and in walks Herbie Herbert, the manager for Journey, and all the guys, and they see Jonathan curled up on a bench at the airport, and went over and said, "Hey, Jonathan, what's going on?" Oh man, told him what happened. So Herbie Herbert buys him a ticket, gets on the plane with them. Now you couldn't do that today. You got to have shoes on, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, not having cell phones, no communication. It was a different time, man.
Yeah. You found entertainment in different ways too.
Yes, we did. Yeah. And many of them were not very good for us, but we did find many ways to entertain ourselves. Yeah.
So I have to ask you. So obviously, gangbusters, then COVID happens. What did you do during that time when everything was in lockdown? Obviously, the band wasn't touring, but I'm sure you would be keeping busy.
I was here, man. I was writing and recording, and you know how you get. Speaking of phones, I got bunch of ideas, either hummed in or got a bass backstage, and I'm putting the idea down. So once you get about 30, 40, 50 of those, it's daunting. Where do I start recording all this stuff? So I got through a bunch of that. And I got a good song sketches down for some things, and some of it I don't know if it'll ever see the light of day, but at least it gave me something to do. Plus, my golf game was better. Golf being an outdoor sport was one of the few things that I could really do.
Yeah.
During that whole COVID thing, but a lot of it was spent in here. I think I worked on my B3. It needed some work done, and it's the maintenance time. I had plenty of time for maintenance, and the studio is pretty tricked out now because of COVID. Actually,
yeah, right, yeah. So now, you got how long are you home for? You were just out on the road for how many weeks?
Let's see. I leave in 8 days.
Okay.
And all the trucks and buses are going to get in. They'll do. Every crew has their own stuff they've got to do to assemble for what guitars are going to go into what vaults, and then they have to work out space because there's 3 bands. They've got to test it. They got to see how fast can we tear down and get the next band. There's a time, you can't be more than, I think it's 15 minutes. It's got to be done between, and you got to be able to do it. There's nobody puts up with a slow crew, and so it's tough on them. They got to work out how they're going to do it. So they're going to be doing stuff like that and maintenance and for 2 days before we get there. As a matter of fact, I have a bunch of pickups being put in some of my basses that I use EMG when I can, but I do like other pickups too. But I just like live what I get from EMGs for rock and roll. And so we're matter of fact, today they're sending off to my tech packs for we're changing out. Same with Ampeg. I mean, when there's improvements done, there's a new model. Yeah. And so that's kind of what's going on with the pickups. And like what my sounds are, but the power that now they're using 2 batteries, for example, instead of 1, which is something Keith Olsen told me when I was in my 20s. I brought my first active bass to the studio, and he was such a gifted geek, in that regard. And so he said, if they would use 2 batteries, this thing would work a lot cleaner and be a little bit hotter. Never forget that. And now that's what they're finally doing.
Wow. Yeah.
And I think some companies have been doing this, but now EMG is sending me stuff that I think I think it's all in a what do you call it? It's all bridled together, so I don't think the installation will be that difficult for us to figure out, but we'll find out.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I know EMG, they have, I have a couple of basses here and there's virtually no soldering. It's just a matter of click and lock components together.
That's cool.
It's actually pretty slick how they, I think they're the only company that does it too, where, you install the pickups and everything, and it's literally just click and lock onto the pots and onto the switches and everything. So it's really easy to even a bass player could do it.
Yeah. Careful.
That's amazing.
But all your basses are 18 volts now.
No, but these 3 or 4 that we're switching over will be. Okay. I have a bunch of crazy stuff. I don't care what it is as long as it sounds great. And so I have no stigma, but we're trying to do something a little different. We're using gear that leans towards vintage, and so I'm trying to play all Fenders. Now it's one of the reasons I needed some new pickup configurations, because to play with sticks, it's a big sound. And I noticed Chuck, for example, back in the day when everything was coming off the stage, I could hear him. But now that everything there's no cabinets, and so I want to make sure that I'm a part of the mix. And so I'm finding out that a lot of passive pickups, great in the studio, have a nice warm tone, love it, don't change a thing. But when I'm playing live, I need something edgy that can cut through that and still have a nice tone to it, so that so that I get compliments afterwards.
Yeah, right. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, you just nailed it right there, because there's a lot of guys, there's kind of a movement where a lot of guys are going back to vintage and passive stuff, but you're in a situation where you're playing against an amazing drummer who hits hard, 2 guitar players, and a keyboard player. So that is a huge
vocal on top,
and big vocals on top of it all. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, you need something that's going to cut through that mix.
This is the hardest band I've ever been in to
Is it really?
I swear I'm here. I'm right over here. I'm over here. It is. You got to. It's tuned me up. It's really tuned me up, and I've had to do a lot of research, and it's a building process. But I'm pretty much been there for the most part for the last 4 years, maybe 5. But I'm still thinking it can be better. You're always trying to reinvent the wheel, and so I got on the phone with Tommy, my guy at AMG, and he's telling me about all these improvements, because I just said, can I go to school for a minute, because this is what I need, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Has that anything been done since I've updated these? And I let him know what I had, and he looked at his notes. He said, yeah, there's actually a lot we're doing. That's how I found about the double batteries, 9-volt batteries. And so we'll see. I'm excited.
That's crazy.
Cool.
Yeah,
you mostly that is cool. Like you mentioned Fender and vintage. Is it mostly all jazz, all P? Is it a mixture of kind of all in between?
Right now, I have 50s and 60s Ps. I love 68 tellies. I own 5 of them. I got all kinds of different stuff, but on the road, the active stuff is where I've pretty much live. I don't think I have. Well, you know what? I have a Rickenbacker. I'm wondering. I think it's got to be active, and I think it's a newer one, so I think it's got to be active. Okay. But I'm not sure about. I'm not 100% on that. They made a run of 25 white on white. They've never done it before. And so they said they were never going to do it again. It's going to be a one-off. So I bought 5 of them. And well, I actually sold, I let Tommy buy it from me. I acquired 5 of them, but one was for Tommy.
Okay.
But it's badass. They've got the pickups now have more depth to them, more body, but they still have that Rickenbacker clang, that's so cool.
Yeah. That's cool.
And I use it on a song from the Mission album we put out a couple of years ago, a song called Red Storm, which is a coup de grace for Todd Sucherman. The drums are insane, and it's so much fun to play with him. And so that's when I bring that bass out. And it's generally, if we do a 2-set show, which we do a lot when we do in the winter months, and we're doing the 2,500 seaters and 3,000 seaters like that, that's usually the first song after an intermission.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And it's very aggressive and cool, and then the Rickenbacker just kills it.
Crazy.
That's amazing. I love black and white. That's great. I
got not getting back to Todd real quick. When you said Todd, I was watching a video of him, and he's got like a camera set up on one of his mounts here that's facing him, so that shows while he's playing.
Yeah.
And in one of the songs, I forget what song it was, but he had to put a stick in his mouth to adjust something. And he's playing with one hand, and next thing you know, you just see the stick come flying out of his mouth. He hit the stick with the other stick.
Oh yeah.
And the expression, like, you could tell he was in visible pain. Like, just
sorry
think about it. Yeah, I mean, and I had to replay the video like a bunch of times. I was like, oh man, that that, I'm surprised he didn't lose a tooth on that.
Oh yeah. I know, because he uses his hands so properly. If I could turn that into golf, I hit 350-yard drives. He's his father his father was a jazz drummer, and before he could really even walk, he was playing drums, and he's learned the right way from the very beginning. He went to Berkeley for a bit, and has had great teachers and has pursued perfection.
Yeah.
Whereas I went for nasty and cool and badass, and guys like Jimi Hendrix who did nothing conventionally, and I'm not alone in that. I'm just saying, but Todd, when he hits, it might not look like it, but it would hurt. You wouldn't walk for days, if and so I could see him doing that, hitting that stick. Probably did almost take, his bicuspids out.
Yeah, right.
He's probably as methodical of like coming up as well.
Oh,
It hurts so bad.
Yeah. Just thought of it. Now you play guitar, and you trade bass duties on a couple of songs with Chuck, correct?
I was doing that, Dino, but I am now playing bass. Chuck went through some really serious health issues where he was off the road for a couple of years. Really, I mean, he would come out once in a while, and he probably shouldn't have, but he loves being out with us, and we love having him. So I had a double neck that I was playing 12 string and six on, and Fooling Yourself, and then a couple other things we bring him out on, and I would maybe play something else. But I went back to playing bass on those, and because the band got used to it, we've now been just doing double bass, and it's kind of cool.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And Chuck is just for the people who don't know, his health is great. He's doing great. He's one of the funniest guys. He's got a crazy sense of humor. Very talented. There from day one with his brother, who started the band in your basement. But for the first almost 10 years I was in the band, Chuck and I weren't that close. We were friendly, but he was going through so much and he was on so much medication, that when he got on the bus, he'd be back in his bunk asleep. He would just fall. That was all he had energy for, us to get through the show. Now Chuck and I have gotten really close over the past 10 years. And he's really a cool dude. He's just, I'm so glad that he's come out this side. I'm so glad that we've now picked up on a relationship that has tried to start. Yeah. But now we're in a place where, we hang and we talk about different things, and then I talk with the rest of the guys. We have our own friendship, and he's just a great guy. He has also fans that go back decades that have just, he's like a mascot almost. He has a little something extra that we don't have. He's something that people really identify with.
That's cool. I remember seeing like on some of I forget what album it was, but it was Chuck with a big old alembic.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, that probably one of the reasons why I ended up buying an alembic years ago. But I remember just that big old Series 1 or Series 2 alembic that he was playing. Yeah.
I think he's got 2 or 3. A couple of them were lost for a while.
Okay.
And there's a couple, I don't know their names, but a couple that would have been fans for years and years, and they tracked down where his alembics and brought them to a gig about 5 or 6 years ago. Brought them to him. They somehow acquired them, got them back from, I don't know if they were stolen or what had happened, but then Chuck had them all redone and not sanded or anything, but just like spruced up and brought back. They look great.
Wow.
So he doesn't have them on the road. He's playing other things on the road.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
I know we're talking about sticks and all, but just the catalog as a bass player, when you go out on stage and you start playing this catalog of songs, of hits, of stuff that, I mean, it's just such an iconic catalog. You got to go out every night just like,
yeah,
And
I think songs like take obvious one, like Too Much Time on My Hands. But that's an instant, the crowd's in 110%. But songs like Fooling Yourself, there's something that happens when that song is played that is special in every single audience. There's a factor. And people love singing that song for some reason. All the songs, Come Sail Away, of course, speaks for itself. When Tommy sings Man in the Wilderness, there's this whole bevy of fans that are that's their favorite. That eclectic crowd that likes Styx, and there's different songs get different reactions.
Yeah,
there's the ones that are like Too Much Time on My Hands that will just that everybody's in with both feet. But then there's ones that are special for different reasons, and it's never boring playing Styx music because it's so diversified. They were able to somehow keep a band sound by being that diversified, which is, I think, it's a tough trick to pull off, but they were able to do it. I toured with them in '79, and I remember John Waite and I going out to the soundboard to listen to a little bit of them because we were going to be doing shows with them. It was like, I guess the first night probably. And we couldn't figure them out. We were, well, this guy and that guy, and they all had their own unique personality that just didn't seem to fit. But then the sound came out, and maybe that's how they got that. Maybe that own identity of ownership and as a person wasn't like us five rock dudes with long hair going up there. They had this. They were bringing more information to the table, and always was intrigued by that.
That's interesting. Kind of like the greater than the sum of all the parts equal to that sort of thing. Yeah. Man, so you toured with them, obviously, with the Babies.
Yeah, we did. I know we did a Florida gig. We did the Cow Palace. We did Seattle. I think we did. Back in those days, we were still doing shows in San Diego.
Okay,
that's kind of gone away, or not as much as it used to be. Anyway, that was a mainstay gig.
Yeah.
We might have done a couple Midwest shows with them. It was a short tour, though. I think it was like maybe 2.5 weeks long or something like that.
Back then, did you ever think, like, fast forward 15, 20 years, I'm going to be playing bass for this band?
Oh, God, no. No, I mean, I would probably be not even if somebody said, well, one of these days you're going to do this. What band do you think it's going to be? I would never have come up with Styx.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. I wouldn't realize. Now, see, Tommy and I, when I was in Bad English, he was in Damn Yankees. And we used to bump into each other in NAMM shows before that and after that. But we had some commonality. I don't know. We've talked about it. We don't know why, but we always kind of gravitated towards one another in just certain situations, and just was easy. So the fact that when he called me after Todd, I talked to Tommy. It's kind of like an old friend calling you and saying, "Hey, come do this.
Yeah,
I think you'll dig it." Kind of thing.
Right? he had to talk you into the gig.
Oh no, he didn't have to. You know what I mean? I mean, I was so surprised.
Yeah,
it was like one of those. Is this happening? I said, now when the manager calls me, does this mean I have the gig or what? Oh, I will say one thing. It's kind of funny. Tommy said, "Listen, I'm having my a birthday party at a bowling alley in Hollywood." He said, "Why don't you come? And the crew's going to be there. The guys, you'll meet management. You'll meet all the crew guys and all down to the t-shirt guy. I said, "Okay, sure." So I go there and I walk in and I see Dave Amato, who's a buddy of mine. The guitar player in REO. He's been a buddy of mine for way before he was in REO, actually. And bunch of guys, and all of a sudden I looked around the room, and every bass player in Los Angeles who was out of work and I really dug their playing was in that room.
Really?
So I realized this is my gig to lose. There's backup left, right, and center here.
Yeah.
And I remember Amato, and I couldn't say anything. Tommy said, listen, we'll start working on the stuff, but we're going to release it to the press. He gave me the date, but no one's going to, can know. So you can't tell anybody. So Amato comes up to me, and you know, Dave. So he goes,
oh, yeah.
You got something you want to tell me? Yeah.
Amato impersonation too. Oh my God.
Because he figured it out. He figured it out. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh my God.
But, yeah. Is that a good Dave?
That is an awesome Dave. Dave, first of all, Dave's a Boston boy.
Right.
So, and you know, obviously between Dave Amato and I'm sure you know Mick Mahan and that whole crew, you know, so Dave calls me up from time to time looking for gear, and it's like right where he left off 6 months ago, he picks right back. Hey, Dino, it's Dave. Hey, listen, that was perfect, absolutely perfect. Oh my gosh,
he's a good guy. We go way back.
So let me ask you this then. You know, obviously we've all gone on auditions and we've all done that sort of thing. What do you think is the secret? Because like you said, you got the call from Tommy to show up, hang out at a birthday party, but at that point when you walked in, you could have still possibly not had the gig. So, you know, obviously they knew you could play. There wasn't a question of can he play the parts. Is it a question of can he hang? Is he a cool dude? Does he have the right look?
I think so. And I think as you get older, it's more about that. Because when you're younger, you just want that guy's a badass guitar, but we got to get him in the band, you know, no matter what his personality is like. And then as you get older, you know who the good musicians are. And we can all morph into the right parts, some better than others for different gigs. I certainly couldn't do every gig that, you know, I might want to do as good as I can do. Sticks was, once I figured it out, I can't even remember having to figure it out, but I did.
Yeah.
And and then it pleased everybody. As a matter of fact, Gary Loiza, God rest his soul, who was a sound man, he, when I first played with the guys at Third Encore, all the gear that we had was inside the big room. So he was out in the hallway running sound and sending everybody's in-ears to him. And after we ran this big long, they had what do you call it? It was like 12 songs all glued together. So we had this little piece that we were doing so we could get more songs in the set, or they were at the time. And I had to learn it. It was like, you know, all this stuff. Yeah. And after we did that, he came in and he goes, hey, you know what? I'll use my Dave Amato voice. This just might work. I didn't know Gary yet, so I didn't know that's just the way he is, you know. And I was thinking, well, thanks a lot, pal, you know. But it did sound really, really good that first day. I didn't sleep for, you know, what was it? 2 weeks at that point. Where I'm just listening to all this material to the point where I'm going, but that's what you got to do. I mean, you got to. They know this stuff inside and out. So if you just screw up a little bit, it's not going to sound. It's not going to be good.
It's like trust. You're just going to instill that trust.
And the one thing was I had learned all the vocals that Tommy had assigned me, and then when we get in there, they start, you know, hey, you maybe should go to this part, and you should. And I'm going, oh boy, here we go. So it's really trying to. But I was too scared to make a mistake at that point. I was really digging it, and I thought, okay, I'm aiming to please right now, and actually it wasn't that hard. I probably the fear of failure was definitely in the back of my mind, but the guys are they're so easy to work with, and so they know what they want. They know what they want to hear. That's very helpful. I hate it when you were doing a session for somebody. I don't know, but that's not it. You know?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Make it sound more purple.
Yeah. Can you give me a little more sadness?
Easily.
No, but yeah, it's funny. You almost like you get to a certain point where, because I've gone on, I've done some good size auditions where you walk in and you're shit scared,
Yeah.
but you almost put yourself in a position where there's a difference between being scared and being nervous.
Yeah.
And you're scared to the point where you've almost put yourself into a point of like laser focus, and it's just like, I am so in tune with what's going on right now that I can't screw up.
That's what I think happens. That's how we protect ourselves. And I know exactly what your armor is on, and right or wrong, this is what I'm going to do. And then I can lose the gig, but I know I got to do this.
Yeah.
And so that fear of venturing out of that iron suit is probably what keeps you alive. And I think that's, I think I started off that way in the Styx. First time I played with Styx, what we were just talking about. But after about 2 songs, it sounded so great that I just kind of went, oh, okay, this is going to be all right, And I think that's a natural thing. I think, or no matter how good or how experienced you are, how many bands you played with. I was real nervous, the Jimmy Page thing, when Danny Carmassi and I flew to Tahoe, where David lived, Coverdale, and we were going to start rehearsals there after I got this phone call when Bad English broke up, and David heard that we'd broken up and was having a conversation, and he called me and said, listen, I don't mean to be inappropriate here, but I understand that you guys have split up or are splitting up, and I've got something that you might be interested in. And so he told me about the Coverdale Page, but he wasn't asking me to join the band. He was asking me he said, we need to woodshed the material, and we want to go to away from LA. We don't want to be bothered. We'll pay you well. Are you in? Will you do this? And hell yeah, that'd be awesome. That'd be awesome. But then speaking of my guys, both Chris Squire and John Entwistle were on the horn, and they'd have John Entwistle's on the phone, David. Oh, okay. Let me talk to him. This was going on, and but they were honest with me. There wasn't my gig. It wasn't my gig. It wasn't supposed to be my gig. I was there to help woodshed all the material, Danny and I. And then the next thing I know, I'm getting tickets handed to me. I guess it didn't work out, or I don't know if it was John Clauden or somebody didn't want to go in the super group route, and they were liking what they were hearing, and they gave me tickets to fly to Vancouver, and we started cutting the record. But my point of telling that story is, when the very first day, on the heels of what we were just talking about, Danny and I were having some udon noodles in, was that in Reno or Tahoe? Well, it was in Tahoe. We were already in Tahoe. And I said, well, Danny, we probably should finish up, in about 20 minutes, you're going to meet Jimmy Page. And he put his soup spoon down. Said, thanks a lot, right? So we were a little bit nervous all of a sudden, because we were thinking of the idea of the project. We weren't thinking of these are real, And so we get there, and we're in the room, and we're kind of putting our gear where they put it, saying, well, maybe you should set up over here. And all of a sudden the door bursts open, and Jimmy Page, with his hand thrust out, big smile on his face, runs across the room, grabs us both, shakes our hands, and says, oh, thank you, mates, for being here. This is going to be a blast.
Wow.
And when somebody greets you like that, it's okay, this is going to be and it was just absolutely a blast. Wow.
Just makes you feel at home.
Yeah. He knew exactly how I'm sure he knew we're probably shaking in our boots, because it doesn't matter how much Danny and I have done. We've got our own sort of list of credits, but this is he knows how special, and he turned out to be a real special guy. He didn't disappoint.
That's cool. Yeah. And how was Coverdale? I mean,
great. He's David. He's a living cartoon character. I mean, he is bigger than life, and I had more fun with him. I stayed at his house a few times during that whole thing. and we worked on stuff. It's just great. It's really, yeah.
When you said, when you said he called you and he said, "I don't mean to be inappropriate," that to me that just sounds like something Coverdale would say. Like he's just this proper Englishman.
He is very, very proper, and he everything's big. Everything is large. He came to see me when I first joined Styx, and he got into the back staging area, and he goes, "Richard, where are you? I've come all this way. Where are you hiding?" I mean, that's just David. That's how
awesome.
He walks into a room.
That is too funny.
I think we all were half clothes, half naked, sweat pouring off us from just coming to the stage, and he didn't care. He just came barnstorming in.
That is so funny.
Yeah.
Now, after Coverdale Page, where does Ronnie Montrose fit in? Because I know you were working with Ronnie Montrose through all this too. Well, not through all this, but you worked with Ronnie in the past.
Yeah. I was working with Ronnie when I joined Styx, and we were trying to. It was myself and Eric Singer and Ronnie, and Ronnie went through a few singers. It wasn't really. He's having trouble finding a guy that could really was a star, and it's hard to replace Sammy Hagar, I guess, even after all those years. But we were having fun doing gigs, and so whoever it was, we were having a really good time, and just biding our time. Really, we were getting gigs and doing gigs, getting better. The three of us were, as a trio, were pretty strong, and it's weird because we went in to do what ended up being the 10x10 record. And a lot of the stuff, almost all of it, were not completed songs. They were ideas. But somehow we went in that studio and set up, and we bashed out 10 really strong when I think about it. Because I had to eventually, after Ronnie passed, go in and finish the record and bring in guys that were Ronnie's friends and stay with the plan that was Ronnie's original plan. He named it 10x10 before he passed. And a month before he passed, he called me and said, "I've been thinking about it. I really want to finish 10x10. He had some health issues and problems and gone through some just horrible things. And then came out the other side, and all of a sudden started. That's where he wanted to go. So none of us saw this coming with Ronnie. Yeah. None of us knew he was going to be gone. And so when he told me that, I said, well, I'm in, whatever we have to do. And we had vocals from Edgar. He had named it 10x10, and his idea was 10 different singers, 10 songs. And we're the core band, the three of us. And so anyway, we went through a lot to get to where we were, and it was it spanned over years to get these performances. And then when he passed, I finished the record. Took me another year and a half, I think, to fly off the road, go to San Francisco, that's when I first got this studio up and running, because I realized the only way I'm going to be able to finish this is to have my own studio. And then I locked down Bruce Gowdy, who's an awesome talent in Los Angeles, who I'd worked with a lot, to co-engineer everything. And the only reason I kept the production hat on is because I'm the only one that knew, as Eric kind of was there for me as a mouthpiece to really keep me in line. He said, "You're the only one that can do this, because you know, not only do you know production, but you know exactly what Ronnie wanted." And so I only hired guys that had connections to Ronnie. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I had pulled out the Styx record, but in doing so, I found this underneath it. So I mean, we've got there's the here. Well, here we go. So it goes from, God, what great players on this record. But from Sammy had never worked with Steve Lukather, and so I knew Ronnie liked Luke, and he liked especially this one song that Luke did. It was very thematic and like movie-like. And so I said to Sammy, I said, he had mentioned a guitar player that I thought, well, I know you like him, Sammy, but I've never heard Ronnie mention him. So I said, what about Steve Lukather? And he was, I've never worked with him before. Do you know him? I said, yeah, we've been friends for a number of years. I think he'd do it, but let me call him, find out. Yeah. Tracked him down, put them together. It was great. Wow. But who else is on here? Bruce Turgan. Do you know who that is? Bass player?
Yep.
Okay. Yep. Bruce sings it. A lot of people don't know. He's a great bass player, but then, you know, when he was working with Lou Gramm, I mean, he sings like Lou Gramm as a bass player, and the two of them together was just magic. So he sings a track. He had helped Ronnie engineer some stuff over the years that Ronnie was trying to work on the record, and his track is killer. I'm really proud of one thing. It's not my bass playing. It's my B3 playing on a track. It's called Any Minute that Ronnie wrote with Mark Farner. Okay. And so Mark plays this really just like crazy distorted Mark Farner solo, and it was just so vacant that no matter what I played on the bass, it didn't fill it out like a trio. Yeah. And so Bruce said, why don't you play B3 underneath that and move the chords like you did in this other track that we did? So I just sat in here and I thought about it, and one day it hit me what to do. And when I hear it, I can't even believe it's me. It's one of those kind of performances. Yeah. Yeah. And I just fell in the slot and channeled and knew what to do. I couldn't have done it again. An hour later, if I would have walked in, I could have done it. But all the performances on here from Eric Martin, who sings the lead off, to his vocal on that is insane. Glenn Hughes, it goes on and on. But Edgar I called up Edgar and I said, listen, I'm thinking of Rick Derringer to do the solo that Ronnie didn't get to. And Ricky, I think that's a fabulous idea. I'd love to have Rick on this record. That'd be great. So I hooked up for Rick to be able to record in Florida where he lives. And I wasn't able to be there anyway. I was touring. So I set it up with the guy that owned the studio, who was also the engineer. And I said, this is what I want. I said, Rick's going to know exactly what to do. And sure enough, it sounds like Edgar Winter, Rick Derringer, and Ronnie Montrose are in the same room. I swear to God, it sounds like they're because through the whole thing, Rick will play a lick, then Ronnie will play a lick, then Edgar will play it was just written. It wrote itself, you know. Yeah. This is a special track. Wow. But doing this thing and getting it done was probably one of the best things on so many levels that I've ever done, because it stretched me so far. I didn't sleep for two years. Yeah. It was fun when it was finally done. Oh my gosh, to be able to hear it and all those great players with Ronnie, and it's just fantastic.
What a great tribute to the man too. And it wouldn't have gotten done if it wasn't for you.
It wouldn't have, but that would have been a shame. That would have been a real crash.
Wow. So, and it's called 10 by 10.
10 by 10. Ronnie Montrose 10 by 10. Yeah.
Yep. Go guys, go check that out. Absolutely, man. Ricky, we've taken up way more of your time than we thought we were going to take up. So I apologize. But
good talking to you both. Yeah.
Thank you so much for getting on and sharing your story with us. And
come see me.
Yeah. Just Styx.com, I'm assuming, right? Or is it Styx Band or Styx.com?
You know what? Just call me. I'll
No, I'm talking. You want everybody that's watching to call you?
Yeah, everybody.
I'm going to post your.
Well, I want them to call you first, and then.
Oh, don't worry. Most of the people that are commenting here will call me because they have my number.
No, yeah, Styxworld.com.
There it is. Yep. Actually, Haji just posted it. Styxworld.com pages tour.
Yep.
So, awesome, dude. Thank you so much. It's great seeing you. I know we've missed each other over the last couple of NAMM shows, but
well, let's make up for that.
Yeah. Okay. I'll see you when you're back up here in New Hampshire. And don't go away. We're going to end the broadcast, everyone. Thank you everybody for watching. Aaron, Haji, thank you in the background for taking care of the posts and production and all that. And actually, we've got in 2 weeks, episode 37. We've actually got Conrad Korsch from Rod Stewart, New York guy too. So he's coming on as well. So be sure to check that out, guys. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you again in 2 weeks.
Peace.